Everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. On today's video, I'm going to try to pour a custom hearthstone from concrete for the cabin here on the farm and then transport it 4 hours away to place it in the cabin. Let's see if I got my measurements right. Let's see if my pour goes well, and let's see if I can transport it without busting it all to pieces. Come along. Okay, so the reason I wanted to pour this hearthstone here at home and drive it 4 hours is A, because of time, just being able to keep an eye on it while it's curing. I'm not going to have much time up at the cabin. I'm going to have to get it installed and come right back. But also, while I'm up there, that fireplace, that wood stove, is my only source of heat. So if I've got it taken apart to pour concrete, then that's multiple days that I don't have heat while I'm up there. But it also doesn't allow me to have heat for it to cure because it'll be really cold. So we're going to pour it here so I can have a little more control over it. I can add heat from my gas stove, keep the wood shop nice and warm, and I can watch it because it's going to take a couple days for this to really kick to the point that I can transport it. Now that'll be the trick. How heavy is this going to be when it's time to transport? That's what we're trying to figure out. In fact, we're going to look at our demo here and figure that out. I did a demo, just a small, I think it was a 15 by 8 or something like that. Let me show you. So what I did is just took some scrap boards, ripped them down to 2 inches, and laid out on a piece of rubber. I wanted to use the rubber, of course, because I want a gasket material between the concrete that I'm pouring and the concrete floor. So just a piece of rubber, a piece of plastic. I had a piece of leftover roofing. Used that, did my concrete mixing and some of my shipping totes that I had here, just doing a small mix, of course, putting together my ratio of Portland, my ratio of sand, and my ratio of aggregate to be able to make my slurry, pour it in. Went about half a pour, about half thick in my form, laid some scrap wire down in there. The thing about adding wire, and some people may not know this, is wire, A, keeps it together if it cracks, but B, also provides tensile strength. It allows the concrete to actually flex some, whereas if it was no wire in it, then it could crumble and not have any flex. I'm not expecting a lot of weight to sit on this. In fact, it should be its own weight, but the wire just helps keep it rigid, and then if it would crack, then it would stay together. So let me take the form boards off this board because I want to get an idea of the weight of what this piece is, and then I can even do some basic math to figure out what my full-size piece is going to be. So if I had to guess, I'd say that's probably about 20 pounds, 25 pounds. But yeah, it's definitely still green. There's rough edges on it and everything. So I think 2 inches is the pour thickness I want to go with. That should give me enough rigidity to not be weak for transport, but keep it from being so heavy that it's impossible to transport or just be overkill for what I need. I don't want to have to super reinforce my shelf bracket, but I've got an old board. This is just an old pine board from the barn. It's been chewed up a little bit. I think it was actually a pig stall barn or board at one time. That's why there's a bite taken out of it. But I think I can get my 2-inch material out of that without any issues. I'm going to take it through and true up one edge first, though. Well, the first thing I had to do, of course, before even starting this, was calculate my amount of concrete I need. Is this your piece of chewed up wood in my clean workspace? He's like, yeah, because nothing else in the shop's clean. That is for sure. But calculate the amount of concrete I need so I can figure out the pour. And since I'm going to dye this concrete, I don't like just the regular concrete color concrete. I want to make it darker. I want to make it look, I don't know, a little more finished. So we bought some charcoal dye for the concrete, and it's an integrated dye, not just something you put on the surface, but something you actually mix in. So to calculate that, I just simply went to, there's all kinds of concrete calculators you can go to. If you've never done that before, just simply go to, it's in your ear, go to calculator.net, I believe it is, And there's all kinds of different calculators you can use. You can just put in your 3 dimensions, your length, your width, and of course your thickness. And it will calculate the amount of cubic feet you need. And it'll tell you this many 60-pound bags, this many 80-pound bags. We're going to be doing all straight up mix. So, pardon me. But we're going to, so we'll just estimate roughly what that is. Well, I'd like to take a second to recognize the sponsor of this video, and that's a company called Toolant. And Toolant sent me these gloves. These are the Balaena, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, rubber, waterproof, insulated gloves. These things are amazing, so I've really been happy with them. They extend all the way up to mid-arm, have the ability to cinch down so you can wrap them up tight around your wrists and your forearm. And they are completely waterproof. So being rubber like that, don't have to worry about them getting soaked through your material eventually and getting your hands cold. I actually downsized. I went from an XL, which is what I'd normally wear, to a large because I was a little worried about dexterity. You know, usually when you have insulated gloves that are real thick, you just lose all bit of dexterity in your fingers when you're trying to do work outside. And these are a little snug, plenty of dexterity, and I think I could have actually gone with XL and still had the dexterity that I want. The rubber portion even has a little bit of a texture, so it gives you some grip. Kelly's been using them. She used them to gather firewood when we were up here last time in the cold, and I even used them down at the river. I was looking for a river stone to lay up in our cabin for our fireplace surround. So, you know, with that water being as cold as it was, I think it's probably 50-some degrees, being able to stick my hands in there and search for rocks and check out what I wanted without having to have issues of really, really cold hands worked out great. But really been happy with these. I think the price point makes them affordable, but very, very usable and very, very necessary to have in your toolkit, especially if you're going to be out in the cold and the wet. I'm going to put below in the video description a link to the product, so you can check those out if you're interested. So if you're looking for a pair of waterproof rubber insulated gloves, check out Toolant, check out these Balaena gloves, and see if they're the right fit for you. All right, let's get back to our video. But since we're doing a triangle, of course, I put in my calculations and came up with the answer. I believe it was just a cat's whisker under 4 80-pound bags. And we're just going to divide that in 2 because we want a perfect right triangle from that. So we're just going to take half of that material and get what we need. So estimating just under 2 80-pound bags, and that's what I'm going to try to visualize when I do my hand mix. But since we're going to do it right here on the floor, we're going to roll out some plastic so I don't integrate it in with the concrete floor of the workshop and never be able to move it. Excuse me. You need to retard your enthusiasm. So I know I'm 45.5 by 45.5 triangle. So all I need to do is basically roll out at least 45 inches. And then I think this plastic is either 8 or 10 feet wide, so I should have plenty the opposite direction. 45.5, that'll work, Timber. What do you think? Your buttocks in my workspace are not ideal. Yeah. So there's over 4 feet, about 4.5 feet both directions. So that'll be plenty. So one little thing I got to take into consideration is I know the dimensions of my triangle. I know what my concrete triangle needs to be. It's 45.5 by 45.5, and then whatever the hypotenuse is to make that up. So I have to take that into consideration when making my forms. I can't use the outside of my forms for those dimensions, of course, because that makes everything smaller. So I got to make sure when I'm cutting these, I'm considering the inside of the form for those dimensions. Also, since we're going to a triangle, I don't want these unprotected or the skinniest little points in the back or in the front. I don't want, as you come to the front of the fireplace surround, I don't want the pointy little triangle tips that you would get with this shape. So I'm going to block off those ends. So instead of coming out to just an absolute triangle point, we're going to have the thickness of the board here to kind of make those squared off. And I can just trim that out when we're doing the walls and other things. That'll keep it from being really brittle there. Okay, so I got my two pieces here. And all I'm doing is making a 90 degree. But I'll dial that in with my hypotenuse board. Let's get a couple screws in this. And you can see I'm using my cut edge. Since this was a sawmill board, it had a little bit of wave in it from where it shrunk. And I'm using my cut edge at the top so I can have a nice flush screed board, or screed face to screed against. Now, a long time ago, when I was doing cabinet building, I made these little cheater blocks. Obviously, you can buy them, but this is just a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that I knew I got a good 90 degree cut on, and then just made some notches here so I can clamp. Are you helping me with this? So I can clamp, and this will help keep that aligned as we're getting it dialed in. You seem to be in my workspace, dog. So there. Makes a nice 90. And what I can do now is take, let me bend those up a little so I can get my tape measure under there. Wish you had hands, you could hand me my tape measure. So I can take a measurement from the inside of both sides of this, knowing that we want to go 45 and a half. And I can make a mark. Mark like a hair lip dog. Timber thinks we're playing, we like to. And a half. All right, so on this end, this is where I want to make those squared off corners where I don't have a sharp point. I'm going to put a block in here temporarily. One screw, make sure I'm using a face cut. Make sure I'm lining up with my mark. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And then I'll be able to lay my hypotenuse board across and get an idea of the angle I need to cut here, because I want to have a nice tight bite. So now, as I lay my board across the top here, find a good edge, I can kind of eyeball and measure how much, oops, sorry buddy, measure how much of a square off that I want. And I think I want a new set of knees is what I want. I want about 2 inches. I want about 1.5 inches. Make an 1.5 inch mark there. Inch and a half mark there. Line up my board across said marks. There we go. All right, I never thought I'd say this, but this is where higher math is going to help you out. Somewhere my calculus teacher's going, no. So 45.5 on both legs. And to make sure I didn't draw those legs in or push them out, even though I've got my square block there, then what I can do is use some math, the Pythagorean theorem. And I know if there was something, if you had equilateral triangle, there was even shorter. I don't remember what it was, but I do remember a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'll save you from all the boring math, but when I do 45.5 squared plus 45.5 squared and take the square root of that, I get 64 1/3. And I kid you not, this is coming to 64 3/8 inches. We're going to go with that because that's pretty daggone close. And the reason why I put my form board on the outside here this way, instead of making it recess, this edge is going to be the face edge, and that's the one I want to dress up. Not your face, dipstick, is the one I want to dress up. So at some point, I want to be able to take this form board off easily and use a little bit of extra concrete slurry to fill in any exposed aggregate or any holes that I may have. And we'll try to get those taken care of at the beginning, but if I miss any, then we'll have that opportunity. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, what should I do? I should put a couple more screws. No, I got screws. Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm going to take the form outside and put a little coating of diesel oil on the inside, and that'll help keep the concrete from sticking to the form board. All right, so now I'm going to get my wire, and for wire, I'm going to use, since I am a junk collector, I have a bunch of political signs back when I used to do political work, which I absolutely hated. So I've got the wires from those, and those will be perfect reinforcement wires. So let me go grab some. You're standing in my clean spot. All right, so here's the trick. The pigment dye that I have is measured out that it's one little container per 80-pound bag of Sackcrete. Well, I don't have 80-pound bags of Sackcrete. I'm mixing my own. So I'm just going to have to kind of figure it out as I go, right? See what's going to work there. So I'm just going to try to eyeball it, try to picture in my mind what a 80-pound sack looks like. And I'm doing a basic 1, 2, 3 recipe here. So 1 scoop of Portland, 1 shovel load of Portland, 2 sand, and 3 gravel. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. And I ain't afraid for this to be a little bit hotter or heavier than it should be. So we're going to cheat, and we're going to do 4. Let's go get some sand and gravel then. Yes, and believe it or not, there actually is a pile of sand in here somewhere. All right, Timber. Gotta get the weeds and the leaves out of it. All right, 1. 2. 3. 2, 3. Okay, so I think that is definitely more than 2 bags. I didn't want to go too much over because that, of course, dilutes the amount of pigment dye that I have. Let's see what our pigment bottles say. This is what we're using. Directions. The suggested starting point is 1 container of Saccrete cement color per 80 pounds of concrete or mortar. For best results, pigment should be thoroughly mixed with water prior to adding to cement product. Once pigment is mixed with water, follow instructions as outlined on cement mixing. So we put this in the water first, get it dissolved, and then mix our concrete. All right, I say we go all or nothing. Debated holding back some of the pigment in case I ran short, but then you're not going to get a good blend anyway. Oh, that's good, dummy. Splash a bunch of it out. Yeah, that dye is some serious stuff. It stains the plastic pretty good. Well, so much for a stiff, workable slump. Somebody got a little carried away with the water. The reason why I'm not wheeling my wheelbarrow into the workshop is I don't want to splash concrete all over my tools. See if these cheap Chick-fil-A bucket handles break. All right, that is wet. That is really wet. That may interfere with my timeline as to when I'm going to take it to camp, but I'm going to crank the heat, got the fans going, and see if we can get this to cure a little bit faster. I really like the color. Now it's going to dry a little bit lighter than that, but I'll come down here in a couple hours and just keep trialing it down and working it out best we can. But I'm going to try to get this inside temperature right now is 52. So I want to get that. I'm going to see if I can get that up into 70. That shouldn't be a problem. That heater, I should be able to get this into 70s easily. See if that'll help it kick. All right, so scared me to death. So the other night, Cameron helped me load this Hearthstone, and it was stout, to say the least. So I'm curious to see if I'm going to be able to move this in place today. I brought an old casket dolly with me. Don't ask me why I have 26 casket dollies at home, but this will help allow me to move it around, I believe. I placed it on a piece of rubber so it wouldn't slide around during transport. But now I wish I could slide it around a little bit. Oh, that's not too bad. Smudgy mark on the phone. Alright, so I need to stand this up because it ain't going to go through the door that way. You're not much help. Hey, for all those people who have spouses or significant others, give them grief about collecting garbage, I just want to show why when a casket company goes out of business and they've got a dumpster full of casket dollies, why it makes sense to raid said dumpster. Come to me, my pretty. That wasn't for you, dipstick. Baby steps. I'm stuck. You know, it's just amazing the concept of thermal mass and just what it can do for a small space like this. So if you're building something off grid, really look at this opportunity, especially if you live in a colder climate. So right now, sitting in this spot where there's now wood, but the cement backer board that's only, what is it, 1/4 inch thick, it's not hot as far as burning me to the touch, but it feels nice and warm. I mean, it's just like a nice hot cup of coffee in my hand. And that is just radiating that heat. So that's just 1/4 inch backer board. Imagine 2 inch thick concrete slab, and then when we lay up some river stone. I picked up these stones to move them this morning. Yeah, so this stone that I picked up this morning, that was sitting just by the fire, it was just sitting right over here, is still warm to the touch. Again, like a warm cup of coffee. So the idea is to get all this thermal mass just nice and warm. So at nighttime, when the fire goes out, and Kelly's elbowing me to get up and stoke the fire because it's getting cold, maybe that time frame will either completely diminish or at least widen out a bit as we have that thermal mass that just radiates that heat even if the fire dies down or even goes out in the middle of the night. So I'm really anxious to see how that works. Yeah, probably should have moved more, I think. Oh, baby. You're good. You are good. And he's dumb. Praise the Lord, that actually worked. You know, I'm joking about being good and things, because this is really one of my Achilles heels when it comes to this type of work. Is if it's in front of me and I can double check my measurements and do all that stuff, I'm usually in good shape. You know, you're kind of blocking the shot. But to be able to put this up, to have the overlap that I wanted, So I wanted this to be proud. So when I build the cabinet under here, wooden cabinet, then I can tuck that wood up underneath and not have any wood flush that, heat can be an issue or just not look right. But this rolled edge, a little bit rough, I'll come back with another stone and just kind of break the edges of this down a little bit, just from where the form has some fine, hairline lips to it. But I'm excited. I lost all my ambient heat though, or my thermal battery there, because this sucker is cold. We need to get the firebox back in here and adjust that stovepipe and get fire going again. Get this turkey heated up. What do you think, Tim? Good stuff? You've got something in your whiskers. Hot stuff, come back. All right, so keeping our fingers crossed. I bring kindling up from the wood shop, so it's extra dried out. And usually grab poplar, because poplar is really dry, especially if it's been in the shop. He likes to chase sticks. That's why you're named Timber, aren't you? Sorry, fellas. All those gotta go in the fire. This wood stove draws so well that if I just put any type of coal close to that intake vent, it will kindle. If I open this up, dies down a little bit, close it, we'll have flame in just probably less than a minute. There it is. So I am absolutely pumped about having this hearthstone in place, and it really has kindled desire to just keep on plugging away on the cabin even in the wintertime. Kelly and I went down to the river a couple weeks ago and just kind of fishing around the river looking for stones to see if we could get enough and if just the right composition and thickness. We want a thinner stone, of course, to lay up. So the plan is to place water stone in place and have a nice, let's circle here. You have a nice random pattern. Look pretty natural. And stuck on there. It'll look pretty natural and obviously be kind of cool that it's from the river. We're just gonna lay these guys here and take and thermal mass as well. So as we got to lay up these stones, obviously we'll make that a video and share that with you guys. I don't know that I've laid up real stone before. I've done a ton of veneer work, but we'll see what it takes to do natural stone. In fact, any of you stonemasons that are watching, comment below. I need to check and see, do I need to put wired lath up first before I put the real stone on? I know with veneer you wouldn't have to do that. But comment below and let me know what you think on this backer board. Well, as always, Timber and I appreciate y'all watching. We pray you have a great week. Take care.